Hey guys, welcome. This will be part 4 of our Hasbro 29-inch Millennium Falcon customization. We left off with the last video priming the sections. I have the bottom and top primed. I have this pre-shading done with this. I just freehanded with some black, flat black spray paint and moving into a base coat. I'm first going to try to do it with this sand gray acrylic paint from Deco Art. It's a very kind of off-white color. It's not very gray at all. A little bit of a beige to it. I've used this before in other Star Wars, and I think it's a good color for this. We'll give it a go on the bottom, see how it turns out. If it doesn't work, obviously we'll go with something else. So I have to mix this up. I'm going to be using it on a airbrush, and we're going to put a base coat on this bottom section. All right, I have my base coat applied on most things, just still some touch up here and there. It was quite a bit of work. Again, I used this Deco Art sand gray, which is really this kind of an off-white with that little bit of beige in it. And but it was a challenge to spray this large area with an airbrush. Fortunately, I have this inexpensive airbrush, this 0.0 that comes with several tips, and I went to the largest tip. I think it's 0.5 millimeter tip, and when I went to that, it started spraying out fine, and I was able to get coverage. But took a lot of work to kind of get the front and or the bottom and top painted up. Here you can see where I've added in the damage marks to the bottom of the ship, also the corner of the cockpit. There's some damage, and there's probably other little ones, but these are kind of the main ones. My plan right now is I've allowed this to dry overnight. I don't see any issues with it peeling off or flaking or cracking or anything, so I think we're good. But I'm going to apply a clear coat, varnish over it to protect it, because I'm going to move into the detailed painting of the different areas, the reds and grays that go on the Millennium Falcon. And I want to do the bottom first and possibly weather it some, and then I'm going to attach it to its base. And then that way I can attach the top on. I want to, because I have all my fiber optics and stuff here, so I don't want to keep moving it back and forth. I really want to protect that. You can still see where the fiber optics still need to be trimmed, and that'll be one of the last things I do because I don't want to cover them up with paint. So I'm just going to start masking it off. Well, first thing, clear coat, and then I'll be masking it off and doing the different detail painting sections. All right, here you can see where I've masked off. This is going to be the areas painted red. And so I'm just going to take my airbrush, load it up with some, I'll probably mix some darker red. I don't want it to be super bright. But these will be the red areas, and then we'll move on to the grays and some kind of yellowish. I'll probably give it more of a beige. But for now, this is the bottom. Now the panels on this toy don't exactly match up everywhere with the studio model, so I had to kind of improvise some of the masking, but it'll be pretty close to what's on the studio model. All right, well, here's the bottom of the ship. I'm mostly done. There is still a bit of more weathering to do. Now, of course, we started off with our base coat of this sand gray from Deco Art, and got that on there, put a clear matte coat to protect the paint. From there, I masked off the different areas for the reds and the grays. For the reds, I just used, I believe it was the Createx Opaque Red. I put just a drop of black in there to darken it up a little bit. The grays, I just used Gray Z. Now, I did manage to do some different shades of gray just by going a little heavier in certain areas than others, and but I only used the Gray Z. I just kind of fluctuated. Now, while the gray was loaded in there, I also started doing a little post shadowing effects, this freehand all over the bottom of the Millennium Falcon here. So a lot of my shadowing effects was done with the airbrush. And after that, it was kind of, to lighten it back up, it got kind of dark. I then loaded my airbrush with some off-white from Vallejo Mecha Colors and kind of hit the center spots of the panels to kind of brighten it back up a little bit so it wouldn't be as dark. Then I moved into some weathering stuff. I did some Tamiya Pentaline accent color. This is black on certain areas. used some Testors enamel thinner to kind of clean that off areas where I didn't want it so dark, and just wanted it in the creases of different panels. And if you look closely, you can start to see some more colors. I did some of the kind of rust effects. I mixed up some oil paints, there's some burnt umber and some burnt sienna. And let's take a little bit in here, again with the Testors enamel thinner and a paintbrush that would dilute it. And a little towel, I would apply it in certain areas and kind of rub it off, and just enough to where it kind of stains the paint and gives you that kind of illusion of rust building up on there. And I also did a little bit of kind of gray oil paint with the same process to fill in some of the panel lines. From here, mostly done. I'll probably go back with some dry pastels. I'm going to touch up these bay areas a little bit. They have a lot of rust. I'm going to probably use some rub and buff to kind of give a little bit of that worn metal look inside those bays. But I want to go ahead and mount it on. I'm going to clear coat it again with a flat clear coat, and then I'm going to mount this on our display stand. All right, here I've attached the bottom of our Millennium Falcon to its base, and I'm just doing a light check. I'm about to reassemble our Millennium Falcon, put the top on the bottom, and I still have to paint, but as you can see, we got the lights going on here. I think they were going to look very nice, and it turned out just fine. I have the cockpit up here attached. You can see the red lights there. That's this temporary, this section, just to make sure it's lit. And then you go back and check the light. I just noticed it's a little loose on the bottom there. And ready to attach everything. There's still quite a bit of painting to do. I haven't detail painted the top, but I'm going to do that while it's attached. That way I can start addressing any kind of issues. I've went ahead and test fitted it real quickly. It seems like once I screw it in, everything's going to be just fine. There are going to be a few seam lines, most noticeably kind of up front here where the two sections meet. I guess you could try to putty those and everything, but I don't think I'm going to worry about that. I'm going to keep it to where, right now I think I'm going to keep it to where if I need to take it apart, I just have to unscrew it in case we run into any issues later on. So there's where we're at, and when we come back we'll have the top on top of the bottom. Alright, I have it all assembled, just being held together with screws. As you can see, I'm masking off some of the detail painting areas. There's going to be some of the mini gray panels that are painted, so I'm just getting that ready to go. But I just want to kind of show you it all screwed together. The screws help tighten up. There are a few little gaps as to be expected I'm going to have to address. There's right here by the engine grill, there's a pretty significant gap. I'll have to cover that up with something, so I'll just have to try to figure that out as I go. Other than that, pretty pleased with how it came together. All my lighting still works. You can see this is just kind of hanging here at the moment, but everything's in place. Still working on painting these hatches right here. So we'll install those once we get those painted. So I'm just going to start working on getting some of this detail painting done. Alright, so I have these hatches on the top. We have two on the left side and one on the right side. And I think originally there was just some stickers put in there, so obviously we want to get some detail to that. I was going through some of my spare parts stuff, and I had this photo etch from my Fine Molds Falcon. And right here we have the center part that's part of the landing gear. And I've cut that out, and right now you can see where I primed one, and that fits perfect inside here. Just a little bit of sanding. I say perfect, but it will fit in there. And right now it's just primed on. I'm not going to worry about putting the base coat on it because it's mostly like dark soot and black, so I'm just going to spray some black soot and colors over that. But that'll give us a nice little detail. Not 100% accurate to what's on the studio models, but again, it'll be nicely detailed and have a nice look to it. Alright, just showing you a little bit of the paintwork here. I've did all our little red colors or red patterns that are on the Millennium Falcon. Did my best to try to match what's on the studio model. So just taping it off and painting it with basic red with a little bit of black to darken it up just a bit. Obviously there's a lot more weathering to do, but I still have some more panels. There's some lighter, very light gray panels throughout the ship that I noticed, and so I'm going to be masking that off and getting that all painted up. But I'm really kind of happy with the way everything is turning out at this point. Everything's looking good, so and just keep at it. Right here I have most of my panels all painted in. I did some lighter grays here and a few other places throughout the Millennium Falcon. The surface here I've added in some light gray, so I think I got most of the panels. I may have to come back and catch one or two. And while my airbrush was loaded with this kind of light gray paint, I don't know if you noticed a whole lot, but I kind of went just very lightly freehand over most of the kind of the panel lines and some of the recessed areas to just give a little bit of shading and just kind of bring out the detail of all the panel work. And I kind of did that all throughout. This is a very light gray that I did. And again, that was just with my airbrush. So from here, I'm just going to work on chipping, doing some of the chipping effects, and I'm just going to use the sponge effect where you tear off a little bit of sponge, dip it in the base color, and then just kind of go along, tapping around like the paint's been removed. I like doing that way. It's a lot of control, and I think it looks pretty decent when you get done. So I'm going to work on that. I did put on a clear coat once I did all the panel lines. I put a flat clear coat on it to protect what was on there. And I'll do the same once I do the chipping. And then from there, we'll start getting into the darker weathering effects. All right, I've taken my airbrush and just loaded some, it was gray black from Vallejo, and just a lot of freehanding, catching in some areas, darkening in. Now, I did do a clear flat coat over to protect all the panels that I painted, and that came in, turned out to be pretty important. There were some areas where I felt like I got it too dark, and I was able to take some of this acrylic paint thinner and a little rag and kind of wipe it off. But you can see where I darkened in these engine grills. I did a little bit more darkening there. I didn't want to go too terribly dark. To me, it's not overpronounced. It's all just a matter of personal taste. I know some people like it really super grimy. I like this a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit more. I got to add in some rust effects and stuff, but pretty happy with how all that's come out. I think it's really starting to come to life now that we're doing some weathering to it. But again, I just freehanded darkening in some panels, putting a little bit darker shades. I did do like some different grays and put the darker parts in like the very center of it. And but some parts I like this panel, I purposely kind of outlined it just to kind of separate it, and I did that on a few panels, not all of them, just to make some variance in the colors and darken up some of these blaster marks a little bit, and a little bit of weathering on our dish and our gun up here. That's just temporary in place. Again, that was the one that I redesigned and printed out, and though it's not 100% accurate, I think it has a much nicer look than what was on there, and basically no cost to me to print that out. All this was done somewhat of a budget, considering the toy itself was over $100 to buy, and that was a used one with a couple of defects. So these are getting quite expensive to obtain, but I'm very glad. So I'm almost done with the project here. There's a few more things left to do. I need to start adding in the streak marks, the rust effects throughout the ship. I need to put in the engine grill that hasn't been installed. I got to paint those and put those in. But I'm going to do all that, and I think when I come back, we'll look at the completed project. All right, well, here is my finished 29-inch Hasbro Millennium Falcon customization. And overall, I'm just very pleased with it. It's very large, so forgive me. I'm having to kind of just freehand my camera here to capture all of it. I finished up installing in our engine grill. I have my lights on, as you can see, and that was just made into like sections. There's just 4 different sections, and very nice effect. So really happy with that, how that turned out. I had to add in a little piece here to kind of cover the gap, a little seam line where light was leaking through. That was, I think I just used a piece of that Revell Millennium Falcon, a piece of landing gear, and kind of cut it to fit in there. See if I can get you a better shot of that. And we'll kind of take you underneath, see if you can see some of the fiber optics and the lighting that we have on the Millennium Falcon here. And a little bit of the detail of the sidewall. And I know this, again, it's not Canon, but I think it turned out very nice. Gives a lot of character to our ship here. And this finished up, I added in a lot of rust effects, some streaking. I didn't go crazy with the streaking. A little bit more on the kind of the far side over here. You can see some of that. And that was done with just dry pastels. Just taking a worn out paintbrush, really just kind of a nub of a paintbrush, scratching the dry pastels into like a fine powder, and then this freehanding, I just kind of rubbed it in there, and then of course sealed it with a matte clear coat. You can see where I added in different rust effects. Those were done with dry pastels and some oil paint, some burnt sienna oil paint here and there to kind of cover those up. Take a better look at the cockpit here. You can see the engine, the cockpit lighting. You know, not super crazy, but again, I think it's a nice effect. Have some lights going on the instrument panel. And if we move to the front, we can kind of see the headlights. I think the headlights turned out really nice. You can see some more of the fiber optic lighting that's going on underneath, and kind of in between the mandibles there. Of course, we have our 3D printed parts, the radar dish, and then of course our gun. The cockpit was 3D printed, the engine grills were 3D printed, and just taking in for some closer look. And overall, just really, you know, it's a really fun project. It's not 100% accurate, so if you're a type of person that has to have every detail just right, this is probably not the project for you. But if you're like me, where I can kind of live with some minor differences, kind of the overall appearance is what I'm going for. And this is the fact that, you know, you get this large display model that it looks really nice. You know, it looks like the Millennium Falcon. You know, for the money I put into it, you couldn't get something this size. So there's a certain value to it if you want to attempt this kind of project. It's not terribly hard. You don't have to light it if you don't try. A lot of it, the lighting's just extra. It'll save you a lot of work if you don't want to light it and you just want to kind of paint it and replace some of the parts like the guns, the radar dish, the grills, and the sidewalls. Sidewalls are easy to scratch build. The guns, radar dish are easy to, well, you can obtain them at, I think, Shapeways. You can get parts there. If you have a 3D printer, these files are on Thingiverse. I might see if you're interested in this file, let me know. Maybe I can send it to you to print out. Again, the interior, you don't have to do all that. That was a little tricky getting that done. You don't have to replace the canopy, I guess, or the cockpit enclosure. You can just cut away the sections and it has a nice look to it. But the lighting there's plenty of room for it, so if you do want to do some lighting like the engines and up front here, it wasn't very hard at all. It's being powered by a 12-volt LED power supply. We have our little photo etch parts that I put in there. You see some of the detail going on here. Again, this was all kind of scratch built using, oddly enough, Millennium Falcon parts on my Fine Molds Falcon. Again, we had to replace a part here. And we have our engine lighting again. So anyway, guys, hope you've enjoyed the videos. It was a very fun project, and I really think it makes for a really nice display. I don't know where I'm going to display with it. May go to my office at work. I have a little space there that'd be nice to display it. But definitely very happy with this project. It was fun, challenging, a little bit different than working with your typical models. But overall, it's a very nice looking ship. So anyway, guys, thank you for joining me. Until next time, everybody have a good one.